I'm from Turkey. My name is Halit Yagmur. I'm an architect. I did my architecture education from UET Lahore, and then there was an earthquake in Pakistan. After graduation, I went to Turkey, but after this earthquake, I had to come back and do some work in Pakistan. Then again, I came for reconstruction works also in disaster-hit area of Muzaffarabad. Number one, that we have to recognize and understand the scale of the threat, that at what scale this threat can hit us and in which areas, because in the same location it may not affect equally because of the geological, physical geology of the area. So we have to understand and recognize the area very well. So geophysical studies and maps are being generated. So before earthquake, this geophysical studies were very weak. That's why it was giving base and being risen to wrong planning, wrong constructions, wrong parameters and wrong formulas while calculating the structural design, that how it should be. So that basic was relayed by the Japanese JICA, and they had defined that in which areas the major and minor fault lines are passing, so where to build some buildings, where not to build anything. That very risky areas were being defined for green areas, open areas, parkings or lightweight structures, so that by the maximum effect of the earthquake, so minor effect will be like affecting the building structures. What we have observed in Kashmir was that there was almost no any raft foundation structures. That's why it was affected a lot. Number one. Number two, the old tradition of construction is that you make load-bearing wall structures. Load-bearing wall structures are fine and they are good resistant for the P waves. If there is vertical movement, vertical force, so they are resisting the load. But in terms of S waves, so the walls, they collapse and the slab is completely on the ground. It kills also a lot. But if it was framed structure, RCC framed structure, then maybe some columns get broken, some beams get broken, but there are a lot of spaces for people to, remain alive. But in this load-bearing system, that it completely get collapsed and the slab is on the ground flat, so it kills every person under it. So that's why there were a lot of school kids which were being trapped badly and they were killed in this earthquake. So that's why type of the structural designs were updated after this earthquake. The quality and type of material and set of material was also being defined. Before, the concrete was being made from the local river beds, the sand and the crush, they were being used locally. But we call it sieve analysis, that you have to check the material suitability for concrete works, that if it is suitable material or not, because cement is only a binding agent. So the crush and sand is the main thing to define the strength of the concrete. So that has to be tested in the lab and then said that okay, this stone is having enough strength to achieve or required strength for the structural system. So that's why in that area, in Kashmir area, there was no suitable material. The best material was from Margala Hills next to Islamabad. But carriage was too costly, so the locals were using this riverbed material for making concrete. So that also was one of the reasons that why there was so much effect and thousands of people were killed because of this wrong set of material. First, you have to be very clear, because there are historical records of these zones, that at what scale it shakes the area. So then, accordingly, which type of structure that is good for that area. So these are in fact classified they are well known. Right after the earthquake, the ERA was established to do the reconstruction of the area. So they had made all the houses again converted into frame structures. So the frame structures were the solution to avoid this much disaster. So Japan is doing very good example for us, for all the world, that they are having 7+ Richter scale earthquakes, but they are surviving it. Why? Because they know what are the precautions, what type of structures that they have to do. And the methodology of execution is also matters a lot. That, okay, on paper you have defined everything very correctly, but while execution, what is your monitoring mechanism that if it is according to calculated and designed system or not? Earthquake resistant building, as already I was saying, that it behaves combinedly, that it doesn't behave in a different way. Why? Because if you have the rough foundation and a properly made RCC frame structure, so it behaves completely as a compact rigid system. So it doesn't bend, it doesn't shake. In skyscrapers, there's another technology in skyscrapers that they consciously make flexible concrete. Like they are too advanced now. They can generate flexible concrete system. So it seems that concrete is very rigid, but no, they have achieved the flexible concretes also. So that flexibility absorbs the shocks or vibrations that earthquake is hitting on the building. Let me give example of this tissue box. If we know the geophysical features of the site very well, or the region very well, we can guess correctly, almost correctly, that from where the earthquake waves will hit our structure. So, for example, let's say that this is the form of the structure that we have designed. If earthquake waves will hit it this way, so this will have more earthquake effects on the structure. But if we orient it this way, so it will have more resistance. So we say that orientation of the building, if we have to design this way. But the other way to design is that symmetrical designs are always having more resistance on the earthquake. So this is what architects should do, that in earthquake high risk areas, we should be preferring the symmetrical designs, so that in all directions it will be behaving very balanced way. And other thing is, while rising up, the building should be wider on the lower floors, and while going up it should reduce its width on the higher floors. So this way it's having more resistance. For mitigation, for example, hospitals or industrial buildings, that the chemicals, certain dangerous liquids, harmful liquids or materials or heavy furnitures, we should not be placing on the upper floors. While we are designing, these activities should be designed on the basement or ground floors. Why? Because once this disaster takes place, earthquake takes place, or part of the building collapses and there is damage on the storage of these items, that also kills the people who were not killed by earthquake. Okay. Number one. Number two, like if there is gas coming into building, earthquake is taking place, there should be automatic sensors to close the valve at the entrance of the building, or there are circuit breakers to cut off the electricity also. So this type of clever sensor system should be added, so that the earthquake disaster should not trigger the other disasters. Okay. And then furnitures. There is a study that furnitures kills more than the disaster itself, the structure itself. Okay. That if you have wardrobes, hang what you call furnitures, that if you did not anchor it fixed to the walls with a structural system, so that while being collapsing and then building collapsing on top of it, so people are squeezed and killed under these furnitures, more than the structural systems. So the furnitures also has to be fixed, especially those which are near to escape ways, like next to door. If you have wardrobes, so that they are collapsing, they are closing your escaping way. So this type of studies are very important for the mitigation.